Good afternoon. We're joining you from around the globe, or practically speaking, in the last phase of the lockdown on the hottest day of the year. My name's John Rink. I'm Director of Studies in Music. I work closely with Tim Watts, who's also in this conversation. Tim also directs studies alongside me. And we've got 4 of our students at different stages of their studies in Cambridge. And they're going to introduce themselves in a minute, but I thought I would just say a little bit about myself. I've been a Jonian, a member of St. John's College for almost 35 years. My post in the Faculty of Music is Professor of Musical Performance Studies. I teach that subject in the faculty along with 19th century music analysis and digital applications, along with supervising dissertations on all sorts of topics. I'm also a pianist and perform regularly, sometimes in fact with Tim Watts, to whom I'll turn over now.
Thanks, John. So I've been a member of St. John's since 2012, and for the last 5 years, I've been Associate College Lecturer. In fact, my lecturing life happens at the Faculty of Music, where I lecture the harmony part of the tonal skills course. And then I wander back along the backs and generally in the afternoons, and I'm found teaching, in fact, next door to John, rather as you can see now, except this is being created by digital magic. And I teach, as well as harmony, tonal skills for second years and third years, moving to progressively more ambitious stylistic composition. And I also teach free composition and analysis. I'm a composer as well, and frequently found persuading choirs and ensembles in St. John's and around Cambridge to perform my music, and it's a wonderful place to do that. 3 or 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to work on an opera, which happened for the first time in the chapel of St. John's, which is kind of a professional highlight. So it's been a place that's both kind of an important place for my teaching and an important place for music making for the last 5 or 6 years or so.
Great. Lara, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Cool. So I'm Lara. I'm currently doing an MPhil in music studies, specialising in composition, but I've been at St. John's since 2016 when I was here for my undergraduate, also in music, also at St. John's. Primarily a composer, but I also sing in the St. John's Voices Choir as well, and partake in several forms of music making in college.
And you're a ballroom dancer as well, I believe.
And I ballroom dance on the varsity team, yeah.
A champion ballroom dancer, it must be said. So. Great, thank you, Lara. Leo, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Leo. I've just finished my second year studying music at St. John's. I'm a violinist, mostly, really. And I think the atmosphere and the opportunities that are available for musicians at St. John's and the university as a whole, but especially at St. John's, are amazing and really sort of really rich and very important for my development as a practicing musician, because of course the course itself is an academic course, but having 2 directors of studies, John and Tim, who are both performing musicians themselves and composers, is incredibly valuable, because there's that even greater level of understanding and conversation which you can involve yourself in. So the performing opportunities at college are sort of endless, really. Possibly some of my favourite must be performing in the combination room last year, this wonderful long room in Second Court. It was all candle lit, which possibly proved slightly difficult with reading the music, but put that aside, and it was this really special atmosphere, quite unlike anything else I've ever experienced. And I also enjoy I've performed my violin with the choir a few times, which has been really, really wonderful with Andrew and the singer directing. So,
I was just thinking, Leo, that maybe the fact that your concert was by candlelight, which made it difficult to read the score, was an invitation to improvise. And maybe that's why people in the 18th century and before improvised so much, because they couldn't see the score.
yeah.
But let's not get into that now. I think we better move to our next contributor, who's Scarlett, another second becoming third-year student.
Yeah. Hi, so I'm Scarlett. I'm like Leo, I'm a second year music student, or going into my third year at St John's, and I'm also a singer. I really love being at St John's. For me, it's really exciting how the academic environment feeds into the performance environment, so that you get to meet all of these people who are specialists in totally different types of music, and have conversations with them and kind of learn different things from them that, you know, aren't things that you would ever have approached really on your own. So yeah, I've really enjoyed my time at John so far.
Great. And Joe, now graduating from first year, moving into second.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Joe. I've just finished my first year studying music at John's, and I am primarily a singer. I sing in the college choir and with the Gentlemen of St John's as well, which takes up quite a lot of my time outside of my studies. But also this year I've been secretary of the College Music Society, which has been a really amazing opportunity to get to work behind the scenes, putting on concerts and organising one of the largest music societies in Cambridge. So another great extracurricular opportunity.
Terrific. It's really interesting to hear these comments from you. I should say to people listening to it, this is completely unscripted. We haven't rehearsed our lines. But one thing I'm curious to know about from the four students in particular, but maybe Tim and I will contribute too, is what makes the Cambridge musical environment distinctive? Why would somebody wish to come here, or what would they find here that would be distinctive, different from anywhere else? Any comments on that?
I think the collegiate environment in Cambridge really shapes the sort of musical environment and the sort of performance opportunities that are available. So obviously at most universities you would have, you know, concerts that with various university societies, but because there are separate colleges at Cambridge, there are so many more opportunities and performance spaces to use. I mean, each college has its own chapel. A lot of colleges have different rooms to perform in. There are spaces at the faculty and the concert halls. So, you know, there's a real variety of places to put on concerts. And I think also a lot of the music here and the performance here is student driven, which I think is a really great opportunity as well for people who are interested in, you know, maybe more background roles, or, you know, people who are interested in conducting a certain work or performing a certain piece. There's a lot of freedom to do what you're really interested in personally.
For
Yeah.
me, something, sorry, go on, you were going to follow off that.
No, well, I mean, I was just going to say how much I agree with that sentiment. I think the performance space is really what, for me particularly, makes Cambridge stand out, because if you want to perform, if you want to put on a concert, I mean, there's almost nothing stopping you. I mean, you can pretty much, you know, you have an idea and you can realize it, and which is really quite unique, I think.
Going off that, I think it was about this time last year, Leo, that you and I were part of a Matthew Passion production that we put on in Trinity with a collaboration between the St John's Music Society and the Trinity College Music Society, and that was completely student-led and very cool. What I was going to say was, for me, what's been really special about Cambridge is the opportunity for interdisciplinary study. So particularly coming from a composition perspective, when you're surrounded by people all at the top of their field in so many different kinds of fields, both within music and in other subjects as well, there are so many opportunities to take inspiration from so many different areas. So just as an example, this year, the last piece that I submitted was a piece looking at the sonification of earthquakes. So I was in collaboration with the Earth Science Department with that, and doing some really cool stuff with that. And you can really do anything.
And am I right
scale.
that Tim is composer in residence at the astronomy department?
That's right. I have been for the last year. Well, I haven't actually been living in any of the telescopes. I've been going there a lot and working with the astronomers there. And in fact, that all came about after a very sort of casual conversation at lunchtime, talking to Andrew Netzinger, the director of music, about 5 years ago. And he's been talking to Olinka Rublak, who's professor of early modern history. And she had this project about the 17th century astronomer Kepler that she thought would be interesting to bring together with music because of his ideas about the harmony of the world and the kind of cosmic chorus that he writes about. That's the thing that turned into the opera, and it occurred to me that actually I was in an environment where I had an opportunity then to speak to living astronomers and to see if they were as interested in music as Kepler was, and certainly some of them were. Some of them had spent time not exactly transcribing black holes, but apparently black holes sometimes sing in C#. I'm not sure how scientifically correct that is, but it is amazing how conversations with colleagues and with students about all kinds of different subjects can snowball, and before you know it, you're doing something that a few years ago you would never have imagined you were doing. And I wonder if you can something you could suggest. Other examples of things like that happened. I mean, because one of the exciting things seems to me about Cambridge is just the kind of the range of expertise and sort of intellectual stimulation that you find outside of your subject, as well as the opportunities that you find within it.
Well, I wanted to hear from Joe after 1 year. Is that the kind of experience you've had of being sort of thrown into a melting pot of people with different subjects who are, many of them, making music, even though they're not reading music or whatever?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that you discover when you arrive at Cambridge, particularly as a music undergraduate, but also, as you say, just as someone who's interested in music and enjoys making music, is just how many, as has already been said, how many opportunities there are to get involved with music making. And I think even for someone who has a sort of background in classical music and choral music, as I do, I've had some really amazing opportunities to do to play for sort of musical theatre bands. I play the cello as my second instrument, so that's been really amazing. And one of those performances came about by another conversation with the student who was the musical director for that show, and who happened to be a third year undergraduate studying music at John's, and he'd said that he needed an extra cellist for his musical theatre performance, and I happened to be free on the night, so I was booked in. But yeah, I think just those kind of opportunities to get involved with so many different music making opportunities is something which is really special about Cambridge.
Okay, so there's breadth of opportunities for music students, for those reading other subjects, the context, the performance opportunities to get your own compositions performed. These are the sorts of things you're saying. I think it's safe to say that Cambridge as an environment is incredibly rich, often very intense, but also exciting and rewarding. There truly is never a dull moment. You couldn't possibly begin to exhaust all the opportunities that are here. I'm often asked by candidates, I don't know whether to go to music college or university, which is better for me? And I never answer that question directly, because you can't really say one is better than the other. They're different. And I think one of the things that makes a university music environment different is this breadth of activity and exposure, which tends to go beyond what one would find in a conservatoire, where there are other attributes to the educational programs. Just one last question before we push off. I'd like to ask you about your experience in the academic program. One of you said a minute ago that the combination of academic and practical pursuits was very rewarding. I think, Scarlett, you said that. And I just wonder if you could say a tiny bit about what the faculty has offered you, what the course, the Tripos as we call it, has offered you. Joe, what about you in your first year? What have you picked up that you think will last you for years to come?
Well, I think the first year undergraduate course at Cambridge is particularly good for giving you a sort of grounding in all the sort of basic useful musical skills that you might then be able to develop in later years at the faculty. So in your first year, you take 6 papers, all of which are compulsory, and then later in your time at the faculty, you can sort of put together your own specialized degree. But in the first year, there are sort of papers on tonal skills and harmony, and these kind of building blocks of academic music that can become really useful. So I hear in later years studying music.
That's what we hope. Let's hear from Scarlett and Leo as to whether, and Lara too, whether you've actually used what you were taught in the first year and beyond. I mean, the two of you are now entering the third year. Did you feel that you were able to use that foundation and then to specialize in greater depth in what interests you most?
I think massively. I think for me, there were aspects of music that I was a lot more confident with than others. And I think that making myself do the bits that I found more difficult in the first year and sort of going on into the second year has actually really made me a much better all-round academic. So things like, you know, I did a dissertation this year on a Schumann song cycle, and it was more focused on the sort of historical side of the piece and looking at it from a performance studies perspective. But actually I found that you know, knowing a bit about analysis from first and second year, I was able to sort of apply that to the song, and it helped me to understand the piece better, and actually made my argument a lot more secure. I think if I hadn't had to do that in first and second year, I wouldn't have had actually the authority to kind of say and make some of the points that I was in that dissertation. So I think, yeah, it's definitely...
Great, that's great. And Leo, what about you? I know we should say Leo is about to go off and do a concert on Zoom. So I don't know how much more time he has. He's about to start warming up on the violin. But Leo, tell us about your experience moving on from the first year and into the second and now third.
So, well, I mean, there's so many things, it's impossible to talk about all of them, but I think I might talk a little bit about my dissertation again, which certainly drew on performance aspects and ethnomusicology procedures and ideas that I learned from first year. And actually I used a concert of sort of Jewish Arabic music that I put on an extracurricular thing as a case study for my dissertation. So I mean the two become so inextricably connected that I mean you can really one can really enhance the other, and the academic procedures and devices that I learnt in writing and in analysing and evaluating results and how concerts are received from first year was certainly incredibly useful, and something that I will certainly take far beyond Cambridge and into my future endeavours as well.
So a sort of life lesson to that.
Yeah.
And Lara, finally, I mean, you've had now 4 years in Cambridge.
4 years, yeah.
Probably far more that you could tell us than we have time for, but just give us maybe 1 or 2 observations.
I'll highlight tonal skills because I took that throughout the 3 years. That was incredibly useful because being able to start from the building blocks of counterpoint and taking that through into writing music in different styles and genres and trying to imitate your favorite composers was a really fun exercise, but also incredibly useful for writing your own stuff. And I took that right up to third year, where I remember writing a canon in an hour in an exam hall, and it was really cool to be able to come out of 3 years and be able to do that. So that has been probably one of the most directly easily to see how useful that is from a composition point of view, but also the way that the course teaches you how to think critically about music is so widely applicable. And yeah, I took a course called Decolonizing the Ear in third year, and I know that's had a massive impact on how I read music and how I think about music, to the extent of writing one of my dissertations this year as part of my master's was on noise politics and the sonic presence of Islam in France. And I wouldn't even know where to start with that had I not done those 3 years of building up how we think about music from so many different perspectives. So
oh, that's terrific. Well, those of you who are still listening, I'm sure will agree with me, and I'm sure also with Tim, that we've got some incredibly interesting students here, and we're very, very fortunate at St. John's particularly to have a large body of music students, the largest of any college at present, with 18 undergraduates and a number of postgraduates. And although it would be a bit strange to describe it as one big happy family, that is sort of how it feels, and we get on very well and enjoy each other's company. One of the things that I particularly value is the opportunity in small group teaching sessions, the so-called supervisions, to go back and forth in just the way we are now, exchanging ideas and really probing and pushing and allowing people's imaginations to develop, even as they also develop their powers of articulation, broader knowledge and awareness and so forth. And I think that's another important feature of Cambridge, another importantly distinctive feature of Cambridge that we'd all confess to and have plenty to say about. So we better wrap up now. Is there anything that anyone else would like to add just as a farewell? No? All right. Well, if any of you out there wish to know more, do feel free to get in touch with the admissions office at St. John's, or Tim Watts and I will be very happy to field any questions you might have. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our students. Thanks to Tim. And there we are. Thank you very much. Goodbye.